Good day everyone. We are Group 2 and we are here to continue the report about the life and works of Rizal. So ang topic natin for today class is the Philippines of Rizal's times and the advent of a national hero. So dito muna tayo sa the Philippines of Rizal's time. May hinanda kami ditong quotation galing sa ating national hero na si Jose Rizal. He who does not know how to look back at where he came from will never get to his destination. So alam ko naman natin na sobrang familiar naman tayo sa quotation na to kasi nga isa to sa mga lagi natin nababasa dati nung LM tayo, ganun. So dito tayo sa instability of colonial administration. So by the reign of King Ferdinand VII, naging unstable yung politics ng Spanish. So ganito kasi yan. Pag unstable kasi yung politics nun, parang may frequent change sa mga parang colonial policies tsaka dun sa mga nakaupong governor general dati nung time na yon. So ito, nakaapekto kasi to sa economic development ng Pilipinas. Kasi nga, ayun nga, paulit ang daming nababago. Yung mga leader nitong time na to, biglang mamaya-maya mapapalitan na naman. So yun yung naging problema nung time na yon. Kung unstable yung Spain nung time na yon, talagang maapektuhan tayo dahil nga 'di ba nasakop tayo ng Spain so handle nila tayo politically and economically. So dito naman tayo sa corrupt officialdom. Meron ako ditong 5 pangalan ng mga general at may isang admiral and papakita ko sa inyo kung gaano ka-corrupt nung dati yung mga government officials nung mga Spanish nung time na yon. So mag-umpisa tayo kay General Rafael D. Izquierdo. So siya yung nagpa-execute sa Gombursa. Pamilya naman tayo dyan. Sila yung nabansagang mga martir nung time na yon. Next naman is si Admiral Jose Malcampo. Siya naman isang Moro fighter. Ang kaso, siya ay parang nabansagan siyang weak and incapable of leading the country. Next naman is si Fernando, si General Fernando Primo de Rivera. Siya naman po is may gambling issues. So kita na naman natin kung gaano ka-corrupt yung time na yun. Next naman is si General Valeriano Weyler. Siya naman is sa sobrang corrupt niya at sa sobrang dami niyang tinanggap na mga bribes nung bago siya maging leader nung time na yon, parang mahirap siya from Spain. So pag alis niya ng Spain, naging millionaire na siya. Kailangan natin questionin saan galing yon. So according dito sa ating reference, galing yun sa mga bribes na nakuha niya from sa mga businesses from Filipinos, sa mga nakorap niya na pera, ganun. And nabansagan din siyang the butcher. So bakit siya nabansagan the butcher? Dahil siya ay parang naatasan siya sa isang mission or kung ano man sa Cuba. And doon, may pinatupad siyang isang program na madaming namatay ng mga Cubans. And siya rin po yung nagpa-execute sa ating national hero. Under sa command niya yon kung bakit na-execute si Jose Rizal.
So let's talk about the Philippine representation in Spanish Cortes. So let me read. The Spanish Cortes was abolished to hide the corruption and abuse happening in the Philippines. Thus, our country was poorly represented and resulted various atrocities of the Spanish colonizers. So this is pretty much like self-explanatory. The Philippines was or the Spanish Cortes rather was abolished in order to hide the corruption and the abuse happening in the Philippines. So so what is the Spanish Cortes and its importance? So first, let me talk about the Spanish Cortes. The Cortes is the most powerful governmental institution of the state. It is made up of a lower house, the Congress of Deputies, and upper chamber and the Senate. It is also the body that is responsible, if necessary, for accusing the prime minister or his ministers of treasons or crimes against the state. So we can say that the Spanish Cortes was substantial in order for at least the Filipinos to have somewhere to report the atrocities or the abuse they were experiencing under the Spaniards. But because the Spanish Cortes was abolished, of course, as we all know, the Filipinos now has a harder time reporting or having somewhere to tell or having someone or somewhere to tell what kind of abuse they were experiencing. They were badly represented on court, or barely represented on court whenever they have like reports or cases to or trials to undergo to. We were badly represented, and the Filipinos didn't have any means to report the conditions of the country in the court because of the said atrocities. You would like to think that this only happened before, but if you really think about it, like this also present, this also something that we see today. Filipinos or the poor, not only Filipinos but the poor, badly represented on the court because of their financial conditions, and most of the time people with power are always coming out as the innocent people, even though they did the abuse. Poor people were badly represented on court because they cannot afford someone to fight for them. And also that was the Philippines condition when the Spanish Cortes was abolished that day. Let's talk about human rights denied to Filipinos. So the Filipinos were denied of basic human rights such as freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of association, and the like of sorts. So as we all know, back then the Filipinos were oppressed. The Spaniards always ruled over us. The Filipinos were just another thing that the Spaniards think of or look at as people that were below them. So we did not have any sort of power over the Spaniards back then. So you can see here, the freedom of speech and the freedom of press were taken away for the Filipinos. So we cannot express ourselves. We cannot express the abuse we were experiencing under the rule of the Spaniards. So of course, some Filipinos will try to fight back and try to voice out themselves and try to fight the oppression they were experiencing. Um, we all know all about the famous line, the symbolic line, punitin ng inyong mga sedula, or the cry of Pugadlawin. This was a way of Filipinos, Bonifacio, of trying to refute the oppression we were experiencing under the hands of the Spaniards. They believed that the cedula was a manifestation of the tyranny in the country. So what they did was to tear up their cedulas together with other members of the Katipunan, and this became a symbolic event that happened in our country. Filipinos finally fighting back for the oppression they were experiencing with under the Spaniards. So another way Filipinos tried of refuting the oppression of the Spaniards was the La Solidaridad. But sadly, it did not went through because the La Solidaridad was confiscated through mails. It was confiscated. This happened because it has a failing foundation, and also it did not agree with the demands of the Spanish court. This is why the La Solidaridad was confiscated and did not fulfill the role it was supposed to fulfill, um, because the Spaniards have power, and as the La Solidaridad did not meet the demands of the people in power, of course, they will make their move in order to prevent this thing from happening. So that's what happened. But at least the Filipinos were able to do, or were able to fight for their freedom, fight for their rights, and that was the start, or that was something that they needed in order to finally win the freedom for the Philippines. So no equality before the law. So Spaniards considered themselves as the highest in the social hierarchy, and the Spanish penal code was stricter with Filipinos. This made their court hearings unfair, and it was impossible to win a case, especially if you live under poor conditions. So as I said earlier, the Filipinos, especially the poor Filipinos, were badly represented on court. Um, it's always the Spanish who wins on court trials, and this was because they considered themselves as the highest power, or the highest in the social hierarchy. So everything I've explained thus far leads to this, like how the Spaniards look at themselves as the highest form of power, and because of this they used this power in order to always win against the poor Filipinos, especially on trials, on court hearings, and other things that where they can use their power in order to win. So what happened? The Spaniards, because of their social standing, their skin color, were were able to get away with crimes, while Filipinos had their penalties. So we can see here how racism, inequality was present even before, back then, and also we as a country also experienced this kind of treatment, way back before. So you would like to think that maybe things got better and things will be better once this uh, time of or this era ended, but you would like to think that, but sadly, still racism and inequality is still present, and we also still experience this kind of treatment even today. But going back with the Filipinos back then, during the Spaniards' rule, um, because of our skin color and because of the less priorities we were getting, um, on various occasions, we were poorly treated, or we were mistreated a lot of times. You will have a chance if you're from a well-off family, from a family that has enough financial support, or if you have well financial support, then maybe you will have a chance to be represented on court hearings well. But if you are poor and you have no money to pay for a good lawyer or something, you will be poorly represented, and most of the time you will lose the case, even though you really suffered, or really paid the consequences of the abuse you've experienced. Because we were oppressed by the Spaniards, of course, the court hearings will always favor them, because, as said here, they consider themselves as the highest power, not only in the hierarchy but in the whole country, because they ruled over us. So this was the experience our ancestors are having during those times.
Maladministration of justice means that justice is only for who can afford. Sa maladministration of justice, yung court of justice po ay mga korap. Ang mga judges, fiscals at iba pang court officials ay hindi sanay, walang kabuluhan at madalas na walang alam sa batas. Dito din ay magastos at mabagal ang hustisya. Dagdag pa dito, ang mga mahirap na Pilipino ay walang anumang akses sa korte. Sa masa ng Pilipino, ang paglilitis sa korte ay isang kapahamakan. Racial discrimination. Discrimination to the Filipino, the Spaniards think of the Filipinos as slave Indio. Sa racial discrimination naman ay ang mga Pilipino dito ay tinawag na brown skin at flat nose Indios. Dito din ay inintroduce ng Spain ang Christianity's egalitarian concept of brotherhood of all men under God the Father. Ngunit ang mga Pilipino ay tinuturing na mga mas mababang mga nilalang na binigyan diin ang mga karapatan na tinatamasa ng mga Espanyol. At ang panghuli ay kakulangan ng mga pagkakataon para sa mga edukadong batang Pilipino na tumaas sa serbisyo ng Diyos at bansa.
So for new topic, let's have philocracy. During Hispanic-Philippine era, Spanish political philosophy of union of church and state form a unique government na tinatawag nilang philocracy. Na kung saan kaya ito tinawag na philocracy dahil ito ay government by friars. During Spanish conquest, ang mga friars na Agustinians, Dominicans, and Franciscans ay kinontrol ang religious and educational life sa bansang Pilipinas. Na kung saan, pagpasok ng 19th century, ay naka-acquired na nga sila ng mga political power, influence, and riches na ginamit nila para mas lalo pa nilang makontrol ang mga Pilipino. Practically, ang mga friars ay pinamamahalaan talaga ang Pilipinas under a civil government, na kung saan ang bawat colonial authorities ay under sa kanila, magmula sa Governor General hanggang sa Alcalde Mayores. At almost ng mga lugar sa archipelago ay under nila o control nila, except sa mga unspecified na island gaya ng Mindanao, Sulu at iba pang pagan hinterlands, kasi under sila sa friar curate. Aside sa mga gawain pangsimbahan ng isang friar, ang mga friar na yon ay isa din supervisor of local election, the inspector of school and taxes, the arbiter of morals, and the censor of books and comedians, especially in stage and plays. Friars also is the superintendent of public works and the guardian of peace and order. Gaya nga din ng sinabi ko kanina, na kung saan ang mga friar ay may malakas na political power, ay kaya nilang ipakulong ang kahit sinong Pilipino na gustuhin nila. Basta sabihan lang nila na lang itong pilibustero, na kung saan sa English ay traitor, ay agad na ikaw nahuhulihin o papatayin bilang kaaway ng Diyos at ng Spain. Ang mga Filipino reformists under the rule of Rizal, M.H. del Pilar, and G. Lopez Jaena denounced the friars as the enemies of liberal reforms and modern progress in the Philippines, na kung saan ayon niya kay Rizal, ang philocracy ay mayroong dalawang muka, gaya ng Roman God Janus, na kung saan ang unang nabanggit nga dito ay ang kanyang bad face. Rizal and his contemporaries was darkly portrayed philocracy by way of retaliation against certain evil-hearted friars who persecuted them. And the other face of philocracy was a good face. According to Jose Laurel, it would be a gross ingratitude on the part of the Filipinos to be conscious only of the abuse of the friars and close their eyes to the beneficent influences of the ecclesiastical element on the life of the Filipinos. And credit must be certainly given to Spanish friars for having introduced Christianity and European civilization into the Philippines. Alam naman natin, under the Spanish era, friars ang may mga malalakas na kapangyarihan sa Pilipinas. At ilan nga sa kanila ay nagpakita ng masasamang gawain o ugali. Hindi naman sa nila lahat, pero mas madami sa kanila ang nagpakita ng masasamang ugali at gawain. At ito nga ay nailahad ni Dr. Jose Rizal sa kanyang libro, ay sa kanyang akdang ginawa na may pamagat na No Limit ang Hire, na kung saan pinangalanan niya ang mga paring ito ay na si Padre Damaso and Padre Salvi. At ayon niya din naman kay Jaena ay mas dapat silang tawaging brave button dahil sa mga masasamang ginawa nila at ang pag-disgrace nila sa reputation ng hundreds of their gods brethren. At sa kanila din nagsimula ang bitter hatred ng mga Pilipino towards the Spanish religious orders. So for our new topic, let's have forced labor, also known as polo, na kung saan ito ay compulsory labor na tinatag ng Spanish colonial authorities sa mga adult Pilipino, na kung saan kailangan nilang gumawa ng churches, school, and hospitals. At kasama din dito ang pag-repair ng mga roads, bridges, even ang mga ships sa mga shipyards at ang iba pang public works. Originally, Filipino males na may edad na 16 to 60 years old ay kailangang magtrabaho 40 days a year dahil ito ang pinatupad ng mga Spanish under the forced labor. But later on, the Royal Decree of July 12, 1883, implemented by the new regulation promulgated by the Council of State of February 3, 1885, increased the minimum age of the polistas. Polistas yung mga yun yung tawag sa mga tao na under ng ng forced labor. From 16 years old to 18 years old, and reduce the days of labor from 40 to 15. 15. The same royal decree provided that not only native Filipinos but also all male Spanish residents from 18 years old to 60 must render forced labor. But this particular provision was never implemented in the Philippines for obvious reason. So actually, the brown Filipinos did a dirty job of building or repairing the public works. The well-to-do among them were able to escape the manual labor by paying the pala, which was a sum of money paid to the government to be exempted from polo. Filipino came to hate the forced labor because of the abuses connected with it. Especially in the Spanish residents and some people who can pay the pala. Kasi, syempre, yung mga taong nakapagbayad ng pala para ma-exempted sa polo, yung mga naiwan nilang trabaho ay mapupunta sa mga Pilipino na hindi afford magbayad ng pala. Kaya, nagiging doble yung trabaho nila. And there was an incident of the hardships suffered by the Filipinos from the forced labor, and it was related by Rizal. In the town of Las Baños, a hospital was built by the laborers. And binabayaran sila daily ng 8 kwartos or 5 centavos. And in addition, sales and charity bazaar were held to defray the cost of the buildings. The architect was a Franciscan brother. The hospital was erected. A palace of the Captain General was constructed. Agriculture in the towns suffer for their construction. Doon pa lang kitang-kita na yung pagiging abusado nila sa mga Pilipino. And some Filipino start to ask, why are the people who pay their taxes compelled to work gratis? Why do they pay taxes if they are not going to allowed to live with their families? Do they pay taxes so that they will be enslaved? Will the money of the taxpayer be used to hire petty tyrants and not to attend to demands of the society? What is the Spanish flag perchance, the flag of the slave of the trade. At ayan po yung isa sa mga insidente na nagpapakita ng slavery o pagpapahirap sa mga Pilipino noong Spanish era.
Haciendas owned by the friars. Spanish friars belonging to different religious orders were the richest landlords, for they owned the best haciendas. The rural folks who had been living in these haciendas and cultivating them generation after generation became tenants. No wonder these friar haciendas became hotbeds of revolts, inasmuch as the Filipino tenants regarded the friar owners as usurpers of their ancestral lands. Rizal, whose family and relatives were tenants of the Dominican state of Calamba, tried to initiate agrarian reforms in 1887, but in vain. His advocacy of agrarian reform ignited the wrath of the Dominican friars, who retaliated by raising the rentals of lands leased by his family and other Calamba tenants. The Guardia Civil. While it is true that the Guardia Civil had rendered meritorious services in suppressing the bandits in the provinces, they later became infamous for their rampant abuses. Rizal actually witnessed the atrocities committed by the Guardia Civil on the Calamba folks. He himself and his mother had been victims of the brutalities of the lieutenant of the Guardia Civil.
Ang next topic naman natin, class, is the advent of a national hero. So dito naman makikilala natin kung sino ba talaga si Jose Rizal at magdadive pa tayo deeper sa kanyang profile.
On June 19, 1861, Jose Protasio Rizal Mercado y Alonso Realonda, Philippines national hero, was born in Calamba, Laguna, to his father Francisco Engracio Rizal Mercado y Alejandro and his mother Teodora Morales Alonso Realonda y Quintos, both of Chinese descent.
The Rizal children: Saturnino Rizal, Pasiano Rizal, Narcisa, Olympia, Lucia, Maria, Jose, Concepcion, Josefa, Trinidad, and Soledad Rizal. So dito, pag-uusapan natin ano ba yung naging relationship ni Jose Rizal dito sa kanyang mga kapatid. And una ay pag-uusapan natin is si Saturnina Rizal, which is yung oldest of Rizal children. Next naman is si Pasiano. So dito, ito yung parang pinaka-close ni Rizal, ni Jose Rizal, pinagkakatiwalaan niya. And to the point na parang ni-reference pa siya ni Jose Rizal sa book na No Limit Tangere at sa kanya binase yung character ni Piloso Potasio. And after ma-execute ni Jose Rizal, naging combat general siya after the revolution din. Next naman is si Lucia. Si Lucia naman po is naka-experience po siya ng discrimination from Catholic Church. Dahil po yung asawa niya nung time na yun is hindi pinayagang magkaroon ng proper burial dahil nga parang na-view ng Catholic Church si Rizal as parang antichrist, ganun. So, next naman is si Concepcion. So, si Concepcion, isa siya sa pinakaunang parang tragedy ni Jose Rizal sa buhay niya. Dahil at the age of 3, namatay si Concepcion, which is parang isa siya sa mga nakakabatang kapatid ni Jose Rizal. So, dito naman po tayo sa Rizal's ancestry. So Jose Rizal po is described as a typical Filipino with a mixture of races. Pero po, predominantly siya po ay isang Malayan. Domingo Lameo. Siya po ay ang great-great-grandfather ni Jose Rizal. Siya po ay isang Chinese immigrant who married a Chinese Christian girl na si Ines de la Rosa. So dito po makikita natin na si Jose Rizal ay isang Chinese descent din po. So next naman is si Francisco Mercado. Siya po ay anak ni Domingo at Ines, who married si Rila Vernancha. Chinese-Filipino rin po siya. So para makikita natin na parang sinundan nila yung tradition na parang kada magkakaroon sila ng partner, kailangan to ay may lahing Chinese. Next naman po is si Juan Mercado, child of Francisco, who married si Rila Alejandro, also Chinese-Filipino rin po. And they had 13 children, and one of them is Rizal's father, which is si Francisco Mercado, who studied Latin and philosophy in the College of San Jose in Manila. And he married Teodora Alonso Realonda, And si Chidora Alonso Realonda po ay parang sinasabing descendant ng last native king of Tondo with a Japanese descent din po.
The surname Rizal. Mercado was the real surname of the Rizal family. It was not their original name as it was adopted in 1731 by Domingo Lamco, the paternal great-great-grandfather of Jose Rizal, who was a full-blooded Chinese. This seemed to be a common practice, so that each family ended up with four surnames, each of the old and new family names of both mother and the father. For Rizal, the compounds were his father's double surname, Mercado and Rizal, plus his mother's surname, Alonso and Realonda. Rizal's family acquired a second surname, Rizal, which was given by Spanish alcalde mayor of Laguna, who was a family friend. Sinabi ni Dr. Rizal sa kanyang liham ay, I am the only Rizal because at home, my parents, my sisters, my brother, and my relatives have always preferred our old surname Mercado. Our family name was in fact Mercado, but there were many Mercados in the Philippines who are not related to us. It is said that an alcalde mayor, who was a friend of our family, added Rizal to our name. My family did not pay attention to this, but now I have to use it. In this way, it seems that I am an illegitimate son. The Rizal home. The house of Rizal family, where the hero was born, was one of the distinguished stone houses in Calamba during Spanish times. It was two-story building, rectangular in shape, built of adobe stones and hardwoods, and roofed with red tiles. It is described by Dr. Rafael Palma, one of Rizal's prestigious biographers. Dagdag pa rito, the house was high and even sumptuous, a solid and massive earthquake-proof structure with sliding shell windows. Thick walls of lime and stone bounded the first floor. The second floor was made entirely of wood except the roof, which was a red tile, in the style of buildings in Manila at the time. At the back, there was an azotea and a wide, deep cistern to hold rainwater for home use. Last but not the least, behind the house were the poultry yard full of turkeys and chickens and a big garden of tropical fruit trees. Atis, balimbing, chico, makopa, papaya, santol, tampoy, and etc.
So for a new topic, let's talk about good and middle class family. The Rizal family belonged to the Principalia, a town aristocracy in Spanish Philippines. It was one of the distinguished families in Calamba. By the dint of honest and hard work and frugal living, Rizal parents were able to live well. From their farms, they harvest rice, corn, and sugarcane. They also raise pigs, chickens, and turkeys in their backyard. And also, Doña Chidora managed a general goods store and operated a small flour mill and a homemade ham press. Rizal parents were able to build a large stone house, which was near the town church, and to buy another one. They owned a carriage, which was a symbol status of the ilustrados in Spanish Philippines, and a private library, the largest in Calamba, which consisted of more than 1,000 volumes of books. They were gracious hosts to all visitors and guests, friars, Spanish officials, and Filipino friends during the town fiestas and other holidays. Beneath their roof, all guests, irrespective of their color, rank, social position, and economic status, were welcome. And that's how the South families belong to the middle class family.
So the Rizal family lived in a spacious house with a large basement where animals and produce were kept. So they lived comfortably and had no debts. However, despite being branded as a affluent, the Rizals were in reality an upper class family who had just enough to send all 11 children to good schools. Ayun, so alam naman nating lahat na si Rizal ay kagaya nabanggit ng ating mga guro nung elementary at nung high school, si Rizal ay isang mayaman at nagbibilong siya sa upper class ng society. Kaya naman nagkaroon siya ng sapat na suporta upang makapag-aral ng mabuti at maging isang doktor. Kaya naman si Rizal ay isa sa mga pinakamatalinong tao sa Pilipinas noon. At yun nga ang isa sa naging dahilan kung bakit ang dami niyang nagawang akda upang ipakita ang kanyang laban against the Spaniards. So, ang pamumuhay ng mga Rizal noon, kagaya nabanggit dito, ay sobrang komportable. Sila ay nakatira sa isang bahay na ang basement ay punong-puno ng mga hayop at mga iba't ibang bagay na papakinabangan nila upang makakuha ng pera noon. Kaya naman masasabi natin na si Rizal ay hindi na-experience ang naranasan nung mga ibang Pilipino na kagaya nila Bonifacio at mga ilang miyembro ng Katipunan. Hindi niya naranasan ang hirap dahil ang pamilya niya ay nagmula sa upper class ng ating society. So hindi rin sila nagkaroon, kahit kailan, hindi sila nagkaroon ng utang. Pero ang nakalagay sa ating mga history books, sila ay branded as a affluent. So ano nga ba ang affluent? Ang affluent ay ibig sabihin nito ay wealthy or madaming pera. Kaya naman sila ay branded na ganun. And pero hindi nabanggit sa mga history books na gano'n na lamang kayaman ang mga Rizal may sapat na yaman pala ang mga Rizal upang ipadala ang kanilang 11 anak sa mga magandang schools. So ayun, ganung klaseng pamumuhay meron ang pamilya Rizal noong panahon na iyon. Siguro naman napuntahan na natin ang bahay ni Rizal nung mga field trip tayo, nung mga bata pa tayo. At siguro iisipin natin na hindi naman ganun kalaki yung bahay nila sa Kalamba. Pero noong mga panahong iyon, yung mga ganong klaseng bagay ay nagbebelong na. Ang mga ganong klaseng bagay, ang mga nakaka-afford lang nun ay ang mga taong may pera. Kaya naman yun, masasabi natin na ang mga Rizal talaga ay mayaman na pamilya. Kaya naman yun, isa din yun sa pinakamalaking armas ng ating pambansang bayani, ang kanyang edukasyon. Dahil nakapag-aral siya sa magandang eskwelahan, nagamit niya ang kanyang talino upang ipaglaban ang ating bansa.
So, class, that ends our discussion. So, kung may mga questions kayo, pwede nyo kami i-contact sa kahit anong Facebook accounts dito or pwede nyo kaming i-mention sa GC, ganun. So, yan, makikita nyo na lang dyan. So, thank you for listening and have a good time po.